we ended up going back to somebody's flat, not his. There was some weirdness where I think the people whose flat we went back to, one of them thought that they were going to hook up with him, and then I ended up being the person who had to sort of like be his excuse to, to leave.
I'm Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, a podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week, I spoke to Mark Walton, who is not only a dashing poet, but is also the founder and director of Shared Assets, a social enterprise that is making land work for everyone. We got together to talk about the Joiners Arms, an LGBT pub and nightclub that stood on Hackney Road in East London between 1997 and 2015. Whenever you talk to anyone about the Joiners Arms, they get very nostalgic and very excited, and it seems to hold a different place in people's hearts than other types of venues. Why do you think that is?
I think that, in a way, it's because it wasn't a particular type of place. Like, it wasn't a bear bar, or it wasn't like a sort of fashionable West End wine bar, or and so in a way it could be anybody's anything, so people could just go and be in the Joiners Arms, which is in itself liberating, and the sheer sort of diversity of people there, partly because of that, I think, kind of made it what it was. And for me, it was almost like a supercharged version of a provincial gay bar, because it's like, in a provincial gay bar, it's the only place in town, so everybody is there, and you haven't got the opportunity to sort of break into your tribes and your little subgroups and divide by identity. You just kind of turn up to the gay bar, and so yeah, you've got like absolutely everybody rubbing along. And so I think it's that that sense that you could just take whatever felt important to you there, rather than fit into somebody else's idea of who you should be, or what sort of a place it was.
Can we cycle back then? You've just mentioned a provincial gay bar, which has sparked in me questions about your background.
Okay.
And so I'm assuming that you're looking nostalgically back at provincial gay bars.
Yeah, there's probably a bit of provincial gay bar nostalgia. So I grew up in Cornwall. I didn't come out in Cornwall. I came out in Birmingham when I was like in my early 20s.
What was the intonation on Birmingham?
Well, I realise it's not a provincial town, although...
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it had elements. Certainly, it's changed a lot, but certainly in the early 90s, yeah, it was not that much different, actually. It was a big city, but felt like a town. So places that I went out, kind of... Yeah, I moved to Lancaster, and there was a couple of bars in Lancaster, and then I moved back down to Cornwall, and so I went to gay places in Truro and Plymouth and Penzance.
Oh, wow.
So proper provincial gay bars, and in some cases the sort of once a month on a third Sunday kind of thing. So that's definitely sparked nostalgia in me for those sorts of places, yeah.
And that time before everyone was on the internet, and that was your one chance to see people.
Yeah, definitely. You would have everybody. So just coming out kind of starry-eyed, kind of like young twinkie gay boys, plus 80-year-old blokes and drag queens and a bunch of butch dykes. And it was, so there was like a whole mixture of people. And yeah, this was just your place. And you kind of had to somehow make something work out of that was a Saturday night. And... So it was both, where you met people, where friendships were forged, but also where like identities were forged a lot. And it was something about being an outsiders club in a way.
So you first came out in Birmingham in the 90s.
Yep.
When did you arrive in London?
I arrived in London in late 2006. So I was, 37 by that point. I've been living in Bristol for about 6 years, and I came to London partly for work and partly I'd been in a relationship with somebody and it had been kind of his decision to come, and then we split up, and I was like, damn it, I'm going anyway. So I sort of arrived newly single, having fallen out of quite a difficult relationship.
And ready to meet the boys.
Ready to meet the boys.
Yeah.
And kind of a little, like I never wanted to come to London. Like it wasn't my big dream. I had a slight disdain for it. I always loved coming to visit and go out, but I never wanted to live here. And partly, I think, that was, I don't know what I was going to say there.
Well, no. So why do you think that is? Why did you never want to come to London?
Well, I used to come and visit for work and stay over, go out. Partly the thing of, it's busy. People are rammed on public transport to get to and from work. Like what you see of London I think not when you come for the weekend and go out, but like when you come to work in the week is not that appealing. You're sort of in a bit of a grim grind. It's expensive. And I think culturally, my sense of looking in from the outside was very much that it was a mediated culture. So like you go to shows and there are professional actors and singers and people performing for you, or go to gigs, but not a sense of like a do-it-yourself culture or a kind of a participative culture. So that was my set of perceptions of it. One thing that struck me actually kind of repeatedly in the first few years that I was in London was once I'd been offered the job and I was kind of making my decision as to whether or not to come, I went out, stayed with a friend, and we went out. And he said, it's very different when you live here. It's like there's a whole other world of like how people live, and you do know, you meet people, and you can make stuff happen. It's not, it's not this very atomized, very lonely, very expensive, very mediated city, which is what it appeared to be to me from the outside.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I really agree with you in terms of like, it's really hard to be a freak in London. And I think, so I grew up in Adelaide and, it's, my lips trembling. It's not that exciting a city, let's say that, but you're not ironed out by the expectations of everything around you, which I think does happen in London. I think that is one of the hardest things about it, just that you kind of have to get on the treadmill to survive. You can't just go off and do your own thing.
Yeah, I think, and that very real risk, I think, of kind of just feeling like you were going to be assimilated, and that there would then be a set of expectations. And I think I was particularly worried about the gay scene and a gay life in London that seemed, again, to be very materialistic focused, to be about what you wore, where you lived, what you had, and so kind of going, I just don't want to be any part of that. So in a way, I think part of because I moved to London, I spent 6 months in a flat, and then I bought a boat, and now a boat. And I think part of that was like almost like pushing myself as far away from that set of expectations as I could get. So it's like, okay, push yourself out of it, and then work out how you're going to live here, what you're going to do here. It wasn't that conscious a decision, but I think that was definitely part of what was playing out in that decision about moving somewhere and sort of wanting to kind of keep a distance from it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? All of that pressure is pressure that you put on yourself. That's a very similar experience for lots of queer people in that, I don't know, there's something about, I want to belong, but I don't want to belong.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know why that is. But for me, there was so much in my teen years after I knew I was gay, and I knew that was, that was it for me. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. But so I knew I was gay. I knew I didn't fit in at school. And so for me, it was always like, well, it's fine that I don't fit in here, because as soon as I leave school and come out, start going out onto the gay scene, I'll be accepted straight away and I'll fit in and I'll have friends and it will be fine. And then that didn't happen. And I kind of, like the one gay bar in Adelaide went to and was like, here I am, everyone, like, love me. And then, I just didn't connect with those people. And then part of that was like, actually, I don't have anything in common with you.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that we're gay. Figuring that out and then rebelling took quite a few years to get out of my system. Anyway, sorry, this isn't about me. This is about you. So we've talked about like you never wanted to come to London, and then your partner at the time floated the idea. Then you broke up. Sorry to bring that up. And then you decided to come anyway. So what was that shift?
I think partly it was definitely a like, fuck it, why would I stay? Whilst we had both been talking about moving to London, I'd started looking at jobs and I'd applied for something and was beginning to be in the process of thinking I might get it. And then it was like, oh, actually, you might have to think about this. And it just felt right. So this was late 2006. 2005, I'd been diagnosed HIV positive. The relationship had broken up sort of in the 9 months following that. I was kind of definitely in a sort of like bonfire of the old life scenario. In a way, like it's the old story. Move to London, start anew, do something else, and I had the opportunity provided by the job. So it's like, okay, throw yourself at it, make a different life.
And so, did he come with you? Did he stay?
He went. Yeah, he came to London, not with me. Like, so we came separately, and we'd see each other around. There
wasn't like a we're going to stay friends kind of thing. It was like, if I see you, I'll nod in acknowledgement, and that's it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
We might have gone out like a couple of times to places together, but we weren't friends.
And so did you have any friends in London when you got here?
I did. I had a friend who I knew from my days in Plymouth, so from when I was living in Cornwall. And as it turned out, this was not planned. When I moved into my flat up in like near Highbury Corner, I messaged Pete on whatever message thing we were using, which was Gaydar or something, and he's like, where's you actually living? And I told him. He's like, look out of your kitchen window, and I could see into his flat.
Oh wow, this is the friend you knew from Plymouth.
Yeah. So that was really nice. So I had someone like literally just across the street. So I had other friends, people I knew, but not a massive amount of people, I wouldn't say. And not people I was like massively close to, really, other than Pete, probably.
So that's useful context. So you get to London, end of 2006, newly single, definitely ready to mingle.
Oh, yeah.
And you go out on the gay scene. What were your first impressions?
It's a good question. I think I was very lucky in a way. I very quickly met somebody, like literally met someone online on Gaydar, and did people within whatever 2 kilometers of you or a kilometer of you or something, and saw this profile of a bloke who I just liked the look of him and his profile, and so contacted him and was just like, hey, I'm new to the neighbourhood, you seem like a nice person, tell me some things, where should I go, what should I do? And he said, oh, I'm meeting a bunch of mates next Saturday night at Ducky at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern, why don't you come along and meet some people? And that was great, because that immediately, it was both the right place for me. Like, I love Ducky and I love the RVT, and it's had quite a big part of my life in London. And that was the first time I'd been there. And also I met a nice bunch of people very quickly. And so I had a very soft landing, I think, in London in that sense. I mean, other places on the scene, there was, a few places around Soho, and I'm trying to think of the name even. It's gone for me entirely.
So you don't have any horror stories about terrible places in Soho?
Not really, no. I mean, there were, I had a few, there was only one place that was still open after midnight, and I can't remember what the name of that was either. And so we kind of had a few sort of random, after the pub shuts, and you're like, shit, I'm in the middle of London and everything's now shut. And so you just end up in weird random places with very odd people. But that was kind of fun. I didn't have any particular horror stories around it. I mean, definitely, trying out all kinds of places and kind of going, yeah, no, don't fit here, Rupert Street and things like that, and just going, yeah, no, I don't ever want to be.
Yeah, I guess, picking up on what you said before about there's the London that you experience as a commuter or as a tourist, and then there's the other London.
Yeah.
By this time, 2006, the kind of East London scene was developing, and Joiners Arms was in East London, and so was that something that you'd been exposed to before you got here?
Not at all. So yeah, that was all new, and yeah, it was kind of a huge relief in a way of kind of going, oh no, there's another type of a gay London. Vauxhall was probably at its peak in terms of like the big, like super clubby type places. At that point, people are still going to saunas, and yeah, there was places like whatever Fire and Area and all that kind of stuff was there. So all of the the big go out Friday night, don't come out again, don't leave Vauxhall again till Monday morning, with your face chewed off, was kind of all very much in kind of full swing really, and did a bit of that. But yeah, the East London thing was like, oh, actually these are places that I might want to be, people I might want to be with.
And so then that brings us to the Joiners Arms. Do you remember your first time going there?
Do you remember the first time? I have a really terrible memory for like time and sequences of things. So I'm an unreliable narrator of that kind of history, but my first recollection certainly is actually in the daytime. I had a friend staying who is now my husband, but we weren't dating or anything at that point, but he was visiting from the States. I wanted to introduce him to my new friends, and they suggested meeting up at the Joiners Arms for, I don't know, it'd be like a Saturday afternoon sort of drink. And so my first introduction to the Joiners Arms, I think, was probably like a really unsalubrious one, which was the Joiners Arms in the daytime, which is like just somewhere you really don't want to be.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was open in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like
no natural light.
Really quite surreal. So there was like the raised sort of settee seats in the front window. So there was some natural light through the slip blinds. Yeah, but everything was grimy. It had that smell of kind of, toilets and disinfectant. And
as any good club
should. And yeah, bleach behind the bar. Yeah, just a little bit dodgy. Like what is this place, and who are these people coming in and out? So that, I think, was my first introduction, and might have gone back very soon after for Saturday night, probably with the same people and with to meet a bunch of friends there. Sort of all of those sorts of Saturday night things merge into one, but definitely that sense of it sort of changing as the night went on, and sort of so going in and it being this sort of fairly nondescript space and just like filling up, and then suddenly tipping into that mad energy that comes after midnight on a Saturday night when everywhere else is turned out and it starts filling up. I was just like, oh, oh, I like this place.
And so, in my extensive research before this interview, which was looking on Wikipedia, it talked about the Joiners Arms as Britain's trendiest gay dive, and then went on to say that because it was one of the only bars that had late night opening in the area, it was seen as a last chance saloon. So building on what you've just talked about, was it a place that only really got going after everyone was chucked out of everywhere else?
Yeah, really. So it would be sort of after 11. So once the pubs started to kick out or people started to leave pubs, but certainly after midnight, it would start to get really busy. But yeah, if you went there at 10 o'clock, it was not much better than it was at 2 o'clock on that Saturday afternoon when I first encountered it. It was, really thin. So it was definitely an after party, and it definitely had that after party vibe to it as well, which I think it's that kind of glorious mix where, because it's the only place that's open, because everyone's already had a bit of a night, so it kind of attracts all kinds of different people in all kinds of different states, and they want more of whatever it is that they've just had. So it's kind of the time to break out the drugs. If you're going to do drugs all night, it's like the time to kind of keep on drinking if you've been drinking and don't want to stop. It's the time to meet someone if you've not met someone already, and it's that sort of like, you were on your way home, but actually there's a light over there, and maybe we'll go and check that place out. And so kind of people that have never been before. And so it's that kind of mad mashup that you get at a sort of after party when like no one went out to go to the Joiners Arms. That wasn't like where you set out to go, but it's where you ended up.
I mean, to me, that connotation of last chance saloon makes it sound like everyone was just there to, I didn't pick anyone up in the first venue. But I never got that vibe from it.
No, I mean, there's a lot of sex and a lot of kind of cruisiness, but not a desperation, not like kicking out time at 2 o'clock in oldie styly nightclub. Definitely much more kind of like joyous and abandoned and happenstance than people being like, I'm here on a mission.
And so, whilst we're talking about hooking up, are there any interesting stories that you have about hooking up?
I have a few. I'm not sure that I want to tell Eddie and all of them.
Oh, come on.
But I definitely met a good few people in the Joiners Arms, one way or the other.
I should have eased into these questions, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you definitely should. Some of whom were more long-lasting and meaningful than others, let's say. So I think on that first Saturday afternoon, actually, I met someone who I went out with for a good few months.
Wait, so on that day when you were with your future husband, you met someone else?
Indeed.
Okay, right. Just so I'm clear.
There's a story. That's really complicated and might be a subject for another podcast.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, there were definitely plenty of like random hookup nights in the Joiners Arms, either on or off the premises. Although I would go there with friends, I was definitely like a sort of like lone cruiser. So I would like go off and like leave my friends and like find sexy men in the Joiners Arms and go flirt with them. As quite a lot of people were there looking for sex and looking to hook up. That was never a very difficult thing to do at all, and also because it was like so crowded, so you would like literally have to sort of like go, right, I'm going on a mission across this like crazy sea of humanity, which was great because you would like just squeeze past someone that you fancied, or kind of like see someone sort of bobbing in the crowd, like, okay, I'm making a beeline for that person, can I squeeze by, catch their eye, start a conversation, kiss them immediately? It's like that was all a possibility. So
well, that was going to be my follow-up question about your style of flirting, because I struggle in spaces where it's packed,
right.
Because I get really sweaty and terrible, and then I can't hear anyone, so I'm just like, I just don't know what you're saying. I'm a really terrible conversationalist right now. But your approach is just for the jugular.
Depending on the circumstances, but yeah, definitely. And it's a funny thing because I don't necessarily think of myself in that way at all. But it definitely is in those circumstances that I'll like, oh, you're nice. And yeah, I'm not beyond a bit of sliding past a sweaty body and stopping.
But the vibe of a venue and the way that it's set out always helps that confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that, I think, is part of the thing with the Joiners was because it was so rammed and so hot and so sweaty. It's that thing of like, you didn't have to be there with people to start talking to them, like you were forced into a conversation because they were like sliding under your armpit, so, or sort of dancing next to you or whatever, and it's just like, actually all of those walls break down. So if you are shy or if you are kind of like uncertain about making that move, then actually is kind of all of that's gone. So like it lifts all of those inhibitions off everybody at the same time, which kind of makes it, again, this kind of glorious open space, really. Like it was small, so you don't kind of break into groupings within it or anything. You're just all there in that sort of mosh pit of people for a couple of hours.
And so this might be where my foggy memory gets in the way. But I have a memory of every time I went to the toilet, there was security in there.
Yeah.
Is that because of all the drugs?
Mixture of the drugs and sex, because actually, again, the toilets changed at some point, but it had like the worst kind of toilet provision for the number of people in there of any place I've ever known. So the toilet queues would be absolutely enormous anyway, just because of the sheer number of people. But then people would be in there taking drugs and having sex, which meant the cubicle, of which there was only like a very small number, 2 or 3, would be busy. And so they just had to manage that queue. But like literally you would make friends in the queue. You might end up pulling someone in the queue and end up shagging them in the toilet. If you're really lucky. But yeah, so the security, certainly they started having security come in partly just to keep it all moving. I don't think they were ever that bothered about what it was you were actually doing.
As long as you did it quick.
As long as you did it quick.
Oh, okay. I have a thing just about keeping away from authority, so I just stopped going to the toilet.
It's fair enough. I think I did actually get yanked out at one point by security.
Because you were having sex in the cubicle?
Yes.
Do you want to tell me about that?
It was really good sex.
Oh, no. Did you get to finish it?
No, but it turned out that he was a total nutter. So I actually
Okay, let's not use stigmatizing language.
Let's not use stigmatizing language.
But I know where you're going. So it turned out he was more erratic than you imagined.
It turned out that he had, some history and was actually what he was a con artist. So had done over a few people going back to their houses with them.
Ah.
So I only found out afterwards, and maybe the bouncer gave me a lucky escape.
Did you not then say, let's go back to mine when you got kicked out of the toilet? Maybe the bouncer was in on it.
Maybe the bouncer was in on it. But no, I didn't. I did swap numbers. There's also,
But it was great sex. That's the worst bit about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I know.
I'm sorry.
There was more. It was fine.
Well, do you want to tell me about that?
I have a poem about it.
Okay, we'll get to it. Do you remember hearing about it closing?
Yes, very much so. I hadn't been for quite a few years, so I probably hadn't been since regularly since 2009-10, certainly 2010. So I had a couple of years where I kind of was there a lot, but I do remember hearing about it closing and hearing about sort of campaign to keep it open.
And so, what were your initial thoughts when you heard?
I think it's always really sad when you lose places that you have an attachment to, both from a nostalgia point of view, a sense of loss of a time of your life that will no longer be there, and a sense of loss of a kind of community facility that other people won't have that opportunity to experience that. I'm not sure that for me that experience had already gone, so other people will experience it differently anyway. Yeah. Always sadness. Kind of losing spaces. I think it's not the only one, so it's also part of a pattern of loss of spaces.
But there's been interesting developments in terms of the community asset stuff. Have you been involved in that at all?
I'm professionally involved with doing my work in community assets, so I've kind of taken an interest in it from that perspective, but I've not been personally involved at all. But there is a successful or at least ongoing Friends of the Joiners Arms group. They've successfully campaigned to have it registered as an asset of community value, and also to put planning restrictions on the site to ensure that there is a queer venue there. I think for at least 12 years after it's developed. So they've done some good work in that, in kind of getting those things put in place.
Just for people listening that don't know about this, and because I also don't know that much about it, and pub closed because the building that it's in is going to be demolished, and they're going to throw up some new build, as is the way in London at the moment. And the Friends of the Joiners Arms have campaigned, and as part of the planning permission that the developers have, they must include a queer venue. And I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I feel like it's kind of weird.
Me too. I have really mixed feelings about these things, and I think it's really important that we retain spaces for communities, not just the queer community, but loss of all kinds of community spaces because of the craziness of the land and housing market in London means that anything that can go for residential flats is going for residential flats, and the value of it or the cost of a lease on a central London venue is going to be high on a market rate. So the market does its thing, and we all lose out on cheap and free spaces and spaces to meet and spaces that aren't kind of like madly commercialized. And so I think it's really important that the principle of maintaining and keeping spaces is held and fought for. What I am less sure about is that you can put conditions on something to go, that will be a queer space and it will be run as a bar and it will have these kinds of licensing hours, and some poor bugger's got to run that thing and make it work. And one of the reasons that these places close is because of the insatiable commodification of land and housing. The other one is that we don't go out to these places anymore, and so they're not profitable. They're not profitable, and people's expectations of things change, and the meaning of those things and the need for them as queer spaces also has changed. The world's different to how it was. You said earlier about growing up pre-internet and we talked about the provincial gay bar. And do we need those spaces anymore? I was struck when I was going there and kind of meeting much younger. I was in my late 30s. People in their mid-20s didn't have the same relationship with a gay space that I had. It was just like one of the places that they might go out, but it wasn't a necessary place for them. They were out. They were in East London. Most places were queer-ish, and so the need for a dedicated queer space felt less important to them.
And referring back to what you were saying before about what we were both saying before, about provincial bars and things, is that was the place where you were able to form your identity and to test your boundaries and to figure yourself out. And now people can do that online.
Yeah, very much. And I think have more license. I don't know. I was going to say have more license to do that in their lives anyway. I think to test their identities and how they present to the world
without being shut down.
Only in some places, and not
and in some
for
cultures.
everyone. And in some cultures, but with that proviso. And I also think that there's something, these things are a cultural moment, right? So, and they exist within their specific context. So you said the Joiners kind of was an after hours place because it was the only place in like that end of the Hackney Road that you could go to at that time of night. Well, that's all changed. So you can't recreate something. And there's something, again, which is like necessary about these kinds of cultures, and particularly subcultures and outsider cultures, which is about the spaces they occupy shifting, like it being a moment in time. So you kind of go, oh, you were at such and such in that day. That no longer exists. And it doesn't exist as a place. It doesn't exist as a social thing anymore. It doesn't really exist as a culture anymore. It exists in it exists in all of our memories, and that's it. And there's something about that which I think is necessary in kind of that type of subcultural life exists in those spaces that aren't set.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, that kind of overlaps with why I'm slightly, I don't have all the detail, but I'm slightly confused about it being protected as a queer space, in that culture is something that needs to evolve naturally, and for that to be kind of put upon a space, to me just seems a bit odd.
Yeah, and I have a real fear that the kind of combination of planning conditions and developers' financial requirements and the need for residents to get a good night's sleep and all of those things will just, will constrain you in such a way that there's not that much space for that kind of creativity to go, oh, let's make this happen in this space. Actually, what you get left with is a shitty space that is compromised in so many different ways that maybe it would be better being something else. Yeah, so it's like it's not how that stuff works. Yeah. And so there's part of me that really thinks that there's a principle around ensuring that developers have to create spaces for people that aren't coffee shops and places that you have to kind of pay to be in, but I'm not sure that this is the right solution to that. And all power to the people that are doing it, and I hope that they get a result out of it. I think the fact that the principles that they're kind of setting are in many ways good ones and need to be fought for. And I hope that what comes out of it in the end is something that is a usable space for that community and doesn't just become a problem to be solved by another group of people who come to take it on.
What's the one word that you would use to describe the Joiners Arms?
Wow. I'm going to really struggle with that question.
Okay, what are the 5 words?
Scuzzy, sweaty, joyous, sticky. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to the Joiners Arms? Do you have your own stories or photos that you want to share? Let's connect on social media. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all under the username K Anderson Music. And you can find out more about Mark on his Twitter account, twitter.com/Mark C. Walton. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record, as much as I hate the use of that term. I've been writing songs about queer spaces and the people who lived their lives there, and we'll be releasing the songs periodically, whenever I can, over the next year. You can hear the first single, Well Grown Boys, which is also the theme song for this episode, now on all good platforms, and even some of the bad ones. If you enjoyed listening to today's episode, then please subscribe to the podcast so you can find out when new episodes are released. It would also make a huge difference if you could leave a review or post something on social media or just tell a friend that you think might enjoy this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces.